work, dude.
This meeting is being recorded. Got it. I love how close you guys are. This is
I
great.
know. You guys are in it. Hi. Right? All right, well, welcome to our first Kendall-Jackson cooking Zoom of the year. So first of all, cheers to you all for joining us. We appreciate it. We've got the live audience back again today, so yay to them. Woohoo, live audience. We're so excited. We love doing these live cooking classes. We get to share the foods that we love to make with you guys out there watching, and hopefully you learn something a little bit about the wine, a little bit about the food we're making. So we're just very excited to be here. And today's theme is foods we love. Last day of February, it's a leap year, and we thought, okay, everybody really focuses on things like Valentine's Day in February, but why just focus on the foods you love one day out of the year when we can focus on making the foods that we love whenever we want? And so that's what we were inspired by today, is foods that we really enjoy making and that we find our guests really enjoy eating. But before we get into the food today, we want to just talk a little bit about the wine. We're just changing the format a tiny bit because we are a winery and we love pairing wine with food. So I'd love to introduce you all to the gentleman in charge of our tasting room, and his name is Russell. Russell, come on in. There's Russell. Hey, Russell.
Hello. Oh, can't forget my wine. Thank you, Chef.
Cheers. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to step aside, and Russell's just going to talk real briefly about the wines that we're going to be focusing on today.
Hello. For all of you who don't get to join us live, not in Sonoma County, we kind of wanted to bring Sonoma County to you guys tonight. So all three of the wines that we're going to be focusing on should have come in your club shipments. Saying that, hopefully you already drank them and you need more. That's what I'm here for. But if not, if you're open, I want to like talk through them a little bit, or if you're drinking them in the future, just so you kind of know what you're going to dive into. First off, you have the Three Vistas Chardonnay. This might be a new one for some of you guys. This is only the second iteration of that wine. It's off of the property primarily with a couple of other Sonoma County vineyards mixed in. So really close to home, something we really love. Crowd favorite with food. I mean, you can't go wrong with this one.
He ate all that cereal and now he's drinking all the milk out of the bowl.
Second one, you have the Cloudland.
You were a hungry boy.
So that one is coming from South Sonoma County in the Petaluma Wind Gap. So kind of a newer area tucked between Carneros and Russian River. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the area, but right where the bay comes up, which you think of the bay as San Francisco. Really, it kind of weaves its way all the way up to South Sonoma County, and that's where that one's coming from. And then the third one is the kind of the creme de la creme. You see, it's the only different label that we do. It's black, it's really pretty, and it's the best of the best that we do. So Sonoma County is the only region that we have north to south, east to west, the east enough that it's hot enough that we can grow Cabernet. So we grow 5 cabs a year out of us here. Stature being the culmination of the best of the best. So 100% Cabernet. So enjoy tonight. I know they have some beautiful recipes paired with these beautiful wines. And like I said, whenever you need more, let us know. When you want to come visit us, let us know. And yeah,
great.
Enjoy.
All right.
Cheers. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you, Russell. So first up for the evening, we've got Sasha. And I'm so excited to see him make this dish and to have him share it with you. This is a very personal dish for him. So for those of you that don't know, this is Chef Sasha St. Germain. He is our chef de cuisine here for Jackson Family Wines.
Nice to see everybody.
And we're so excited for this dish. So take it away, Sasha.
Fantastic. Yeah, let's get these wines.
Let's move the wine aside so you've got room for.
How about that? Right in the shot. Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm just gonna refresh my glass a little bit. So today I will be making Piroshki. So the reason why it's food I love is I'm Ukrainian born. I immigrated to the States pretty much right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it's one of those things that my mom and grandma used to make all the time. To this day, my mom still makes them. Grandma, miss you. Anyway, the history behind Piroshki, nobody actually knows the origin. A lot of people say it's Russian, a lot of people say it's Polish, a lot of people say it's Ukrainian, and then there are some roots to actually ancient Greece as well. So that being said, we're just gonna move through it. So we have a dough that we need to make. We have a filling that we need to make. We have to put it together and then actually cook it off. So we're gonna start with our dough because that's gonna be the thing that takes the most amount of time. That being said, our ingredients for the dough are milk and water. And we wanna just get that nice and warm to activate our dry yeast. It's gonna get a little bit of salt, sugar, and oil as well. So real fast, we just get that a little hot. You don't want it boiling, right? Because that's gonna actually kill the yeast. So a little warm, and then we're just gonna start adding our ingredients while whisking. So again, the yeast, the sugar, that's salt, and then the sugar. And this will help also activate the yeast a little bit. So once those are in, you just want it nicely incorporated and just a little bit warm. And once it's there, we're gonna take care of our little dish section here. And we're gonna go right into our mixer. Now, generally, you will let this liquid sit for about 2 to 3 minutes to like really activate the yeast before adding our flour. So this is just regular AP flour. That's what I like to use for this recipe. So we're gonna add our oil at this point and our AP flour. And we're just gonna work the dough until it's just has all come together. At that point in time, we're just gonna set it aside and let it rest for, I like to let it rest up to 2 hours. I know my recipe says let it rest for at least an hour, but just like that hour is really important for the dough to rise. So while that's working, we're gonna pull our other pot and we're gonna start working on the filling. So the filling is actually pretty easy. With salt included, it's literally 4 ingredients or 5 ingredients. So a little bit of oil on the bottom of the pan. You start with your garlic and your onion. And you just want to sweat that out, right? Again, sweating out means you're trying to cook it without caramelizing it, right? You want to just, for the vegetables to start breaking down. A good way to start that process is by adding salt. Salt is going to pull out a lot of that liquid, and it's going to help you get that nice translucent thing that you're looking for when it comes to the vegetables. So as that's working and as it's, wooden spoon, please. Thank you, chef. So while, you know, you're not always 100% prepared, you know? So I'm just trying to give this a little, thank you, chef. So just no color again. Let the salt kind of break down the vegetables for you and let the heat do its thing. Always be sure to stir, right? You don't want to leave the vegetables just sitting there because obviously that's when they're going to start to caramelize the most. You can hear that. I don't know if you guys could smell it already, but it's working. So as we're talking, we could also see that our dough here is starting to like really come together. It's almost like one mass. Understand that sometimes the dough will be just a touch more gummy than other times. So, right? If that happens, just add a little bit of extra flour to it, right? This is one of those things that's very tough to mess this up. So I have a little extra flour here. I just want it to come together a little bit more. So now that my onions are nice and translucent, I'm gonna add, these are just crushed tomatoes. Now we are lucky enough that we actually jarred and processed a lot of tomatoes from this past summer just because we end up growing so much out there. So these are actually tomatoes from our property. And then you just wanna let that reduce by no more than half, right? You're just trying to dry it out because the next ingredients are gonna be your cabbage and carrots. And cabbage, even though it might be like a little bit more tough, has an incredible amount of moisture, of water. So now that our dough is pretty much done, this is what it should look like, right? We'll just I usually will just put plastic wrap right over this and just let it rise in the bowl. That way you're not using a new dish, right? Saves you some cleaning time. So luckily though, with the magic of online TV, our dough is already made, right? So that being said, as this is coming down, you add your cabbage, you add your carrots. And for me personally, I don't like to cook this mixture to death, right? Thank you. I want the mixture to have some texture, right? Who wants mushy stuff, right? I love undercooked vegetables personally, but even with this, even like with braised cabbage and stuff like that, I like there to be some bite. So this will probably take another, let's say 30 minutes on the heat. Again, add salt at almost every stage, right? Don't go crazy because you don't want to over season it, but that will help with the breakdown of the vegetables. So as that goes, we'll just kind of like, we'll just leave it on. But at the end, this should be what you're looking at, right? It's all together, it's all married. And a really, really great thing is doing this the night before. For me, as these flavors like really, really marry, you're gonna get a lot more. Just like when soup sits for an extra day, for example, it's so much better the next day. Same thing goes for this filling. So our next thing is we're gonna roll out this dough. So start with I love using wooden tops. If you use stainless steel or something like that, you're gonna get a lot more sticky, right? So I like to just put a little bit of AP flour down and then get a little bit on the rolling pin as well. I'm gonna actually move this off so I can bring in my oil for the frying part. So each one of these is meant to make about 16 to 18 pieces, but it also depends on how big you want them, right? So for me, I mean, I'll just eyeball it. So I'll take a little piece, I'll roll it into a little ball, and then that's when the rolling pin comes in. So again, this is not about making it perfect. My mom's and grandma's tasted the best, and none of them were ever the same size. So I'm going off that. So we want to just kind of roll it out a little bit, right? If it gets too sticky, again, just put a little bit more flour on your rolling pin. Into a nice little round shape, or as round as you could get it. And then that's when we're gonna just take a little bit of our filling. Usually, again, depends on the size they make it. Don't overfill these guys, but it takes, for this size that I'm making right here, this is probably gonna be about 2 tablespoons of filling. And then you take it, you fold it over, and the dough should have the consistency that you don't actually need an egg wash or any type of water to actually have the seam seal. And at this point in time, I actually like to take and like crimp it a little bit. Even though the final product, when you fry it, you won't actually see this part, I still think it's a fun, like little extra step that fun to play with, And the awesome thing is like, when I think about it, every region of the world has a dumpling or has like an empanada or a hand pie. And this is why I love this dish so much, is it's universal. Every culture could eat this and be like, I know that dish, or I know a dish that's similar to that. So that being said, all we're gonna do is just wait for our oil to get nice and hot, and then we're just gonna shallow fry this to a nice golden brown. The other thing you could do with these guys is you could bake them. At that point in time, I would give them a little egg wash, right? Just for that beautiful golden brown color, or you could actually deep fry them. So a lot of the times when you see piroshki that are like really, really big, right? It's obviously because they've been straight up deep fried, and those are probably my favorite, but I'm also getting older, so the weight is not coming off as fast as they used to. So a shallow fry is fine. So hopefully the oil is hot enough. And a good way to test is always like just either stick a little bit in. You could also like throw a little flour in there and see if it has a little bit of movement, which it does. And we'll give it another 2 seconds. So there is a difference between, a lot of people think that piroshki and pierogi are the same thing. So Pierogis are actually what we in Ukraine and Russia refer to as vareniki. And those are like the dumplings that you boil that are stuffed with like potatoes and what have you. The difference with this is obviously it's a fried item, and we call these piroshki. The singular term is called pirog, which is pie. So like a little hand pie. And we're gonna drop that in there and just kind of let it go. Dead air. Anyway, thank you. So we're just looking for a really, really nice golden brown color. Obviously, you could get a few in at a time if you like. The thing I also like about this is the dough itself is very versatile. My favorite filling is the cabbage filling, but I have had it with sour cherries. I've had it with like a ground beef. I've had it with potato. I've had it with an egg even in the center, like almost like an egg salad, but minus the mayo, like chopped egg. And they're all quite good in their own right. But this is the one that pulls at my heartstrings the most because again, grandma and grandma. Grandma and grandma, grandma and mom. So a nice golden brown color. We're gonna flip it. And just in case your oil might get too hot, for example, sometimes it does. The one thing you don't want is you don't want these guys sitting in cold oil, right? Because it's gonna absorb all that oil and just be super, super greasy. So I would have hotter oil is best. And if you feel like the dough might be still like touch undercooked, you could always take them after you put them on some paper. You could always push them in the oven and finish them in there. So, and for today, although some people might think it's blasphemous, sour cream is the ultimate condiment, right? Especially, but there's a lot of people that swear by no sour cream and pierogi. I don't know who those people are, but I am definitely not one of them. So in front of you have our piroshki, and next to it is a sour cream with powdered dill and caper and a little bit of chives on top. Enjoy. Oh, so sure. The powdered dill and caper is an idea we've been working on. And all I did was I took whole capers, rinsed them out, right? Just remove some of that salt and put in the dehydrator at 125 for 14 hours. Same thing with the dill. And then I just put them in the spice grinder and there you go. Anyway, enjoy. Thank you. I didn't even get to try my wine.
Right?
The wine's good too, guys.
Right. I get to be up next and talk about something that I love to make. So let me just get set up a little bit here. All right. So any of you that have watched our cooking classes before or have been to KJ or seen me cook, you know that I'm Italian and I love to cook Italian food. Oh, actually, let me hold on to this. I just put this. So one of my favorite dishes to make is risotto. And part of the reason that I love making this dish is because my mom loves it so much. And she just happens to be in our live audience today. So, so this is, you know, but this is a dish that I think that a lot of people love, risotto. And it's because it's one of those dishes that's super comforting and seems like it could be kind of challenging to make. I think it's one of those things that the more you make it, the better you get at it. It's a labor of love. It takes a little bit of time and patience. But in the grand scheme of cooking and difficulty, I actually don't think it's that difficult. The difficulty is, like I said, having the patience to be able to let it cook properly. And the great thing about risotto is that it's super versatile. So this time of year, we're serving on our wine and food menu. We have a mushroom red wine truffle risotto, and that's what I'm going to be making today. But risotto is great in the springtime. Fresh pea risotto is wonderful. In the summer, risotto with corn is great. So there's lots of versatility. In the fall, squash, lots of versatility with risotto. And it's always good. And depending on what else you add to it in the summer, you might not want it to be quite as heavy. So maybe you use a corn stock. Maybe you know, you make it lighter ingredients. But in the winter, when you know you're craving something richer and deeper, you can have something like this, where I'm going to add lots of truffle butter and truffle cheese. So I've got my shallots that I've been just slightly starting to caramelize here, and then I'm going to add my rice. So I'm going to show you this in just really 2 to 3 stages. So the thing about risotto that's important is that, you know, you let your shallots develop flavor if that's what you want. And in this, especially because I'm doing one that's red wine and a little bit deeper in flavor, I want just a little bit slight browning on my shallots. And then I go ahead and add my rice. Now, risotto is made with a special rice called arborio. And arborio rice is a special grain of rice that is meant for this. It has the right amount of starch and shape for this dish. Now, the important thing about risotto is, like I said, we talked about time, but a lot of people think you have to stand over risotto and be stirring it the whole time. And you can do that. I'm not going to lie. It's probably the best way to kind of maintain what you want to happen with risotto. But truthfully, if you can figure out what I call the sweet spot. So once we get this rice cooking a little bit, which we have, I can hear it's toasting. We're going to add a little bit of red wine. All right, so I add my red wine, and I'm just going to let that reduce a little bit. So rice is all about the amount of liquid you have in there to have the rice absorb, but you don't want this to be soupy. So we add the liquid in small amounts at a time. So I let the wine go. And what's cool about this risotto, a lot of risottos traditionally are made with white wine. So it has more of like a cleaner, clearer look to it. But this one has red wine and mushroom stock. So the end result is almost going to be like a cool purple hue, which is really neat. It's very unique. So I add my red wine. That reduces pretty fast here. And then I'm going to add mushroom stock. In this case, we make a mushroom stock that we take mushroom stems and we let it cook overnight with water. And mushrooms have a tremendous amount of natural liquid in them. So they release a lot of liquid, which is all full of mushroom flavor. So you end up with this stock, which is this really kind of deep, dark brown color. Can you get the overhead there a sec? Right? If we've got the overhead up. So you can see that this stock it's a dark color. So I'm going to add stock. This stock is hot. This is a really important part of making risotto. You want your stock that you add to your rice to be warm. And the reason you want that, it's for 2 reasons. One, if you add cold stock, it's going to take that much longer to cook because now you have to wait for that liquid to come up to temperature. But also by adding hot stock, you're going to have a more even cooking of your rice, which you want, right? To think about any rice in any way, shape, or form, you want that rice to be cooked evenly. You don't want it to be like the top cooked, the bottom mushy, the middle crunchy. You want this to be a really even cooking. So I added just enough of that stock to just cover my rice. Now, going back to what I was saying, the sweet spot. What you want to do is find the temperature. And it's actually quite easy on an induction burner because you don't have to really fiddle with the heat. It's more a press a button. But the idea is that you want your rice kernels, right? Imagine my hands are the rice kernels to gently be doing this. If you find that sweet spot with your burner, your rice kernels are doing the work for you. They're essentially stirring themselves. They're rubbing up against each other. And what's happening is it's making that starch be released from the rice. And that is what exactly, my mom is here doing this. Thank you, Kathy. Yes, exactly. And that's what you want it to do. It's just a gentle, it's a sway, right? It's a sway, just gently like this. But that's what you want to happen with those kernels. And if you find that sweet spot, what ends up happening is you don't have to stand here stirring the rice and stirring the rice. Now, I'm not saying you go away and take a bubble bath, but what I am saying is you don't have to stand over it quite as much. You can maybe be over here prepping something else or setting the dinner table or whatever it is that you might want to be doing. And then you come back and look at it because, like I said, you're adding this liquid slowly. So you're going to see the liquid's going to go away. I'm going to add another ladle full of that liquid. And it's really important that you start off with a certain amount of liquid that you know is what you're going to end with at the end. It's not just willy-nilly. You're going to really maintain that right amount of liquid because at the end, the texture of your risotto is really important. And if you don't get that texture right at the exact time that rice is cooked, you're going to end up either with risotto that's overcooked and mushy or hasn't developed enough of that starch. So because this process right here takes a good 35 minutes. It's actually a long process. So that's kind of the hardest part of risotto right there is being patient to let it sit and be in that sweet spot. So for the sake of time, I've got my risotto here, my rice that has been cooking for most of the time. So I've now got my, just get all those kernels off. So I've got my mushroom stock, and you can see the difference in the color here, right? I mean, see the difference from the rice that is just at the beginning of cooking to after it's been cooking, right? This has been cooking a long time, so it's taken on more of the color of the mushroom stock. But because I'm calling this a red wine risotto, I'm going to add a little bit more wine to this. But what I'm going to do is I've got some reduced red wine. So right here in this bottle, I've taken this is about 3 bottles of red wine that I've reduced down to about this much. So think about like real intense flavor. And I'm going to add some of that in. So again, it's really going to fortify that red wine part of this dish. And then I'm going to just be repetitive the same way Sasha has, but you want to season it every stage. So like I was saying, the thing about risotto is that you want to make sure that by the time your rice kernels are cooked, nearly all of your liquid is gone. So when you go to plate your risotto, it shouldn't be standing up straight. It does this nice relax. When you go to put it in the bowl, it'll do this. Right? It'll gently relax. You don't want it to be soupy. You don't want to see too much of that liquid coming out the sides, like it's separating. So that's the part that's also really worth paying a good amount of attention to, is like I said, that sweet spot where the rice is fully cooked, has absorbed all the flavor of all these wonderful ingredients you're putting in it, but also has that really luscious texture. So we're getting to, let me turn this up a little bit more. We're getting just about there with this. So at this point, right, you can still see like I've got a good amount of liquid in there. I'm going to add in some roasted mushrooms. These are mushrooms that we have from a local company called Mycopia Mushrooms. They're out of a town called Sebastopol here in Sonoma County, and they cultivate their own mushrooms. It's a really, really interesting, fascinating thing that they do. You can go into if you're lucky enough to get a tour there, they've got these big rooms that all of the mushrooms are growing out of these. They look like mason jars, but they're not clear. And it's filled with like sawdust, and that's what it's grown out of. And then these beautiful, the most perfect ploushes of mushrooms. Every single one looks perfect and exactly the same. And there's just rows and rows and rows of them. It's absolutely beautiful. And they are the most consistent, delicious product that are, cultivated, not out in the wild, which is really kind of fun. You know what? I think you can do tours certain times of the year. I know if you're a local, they do a great thing. It's either Thursdays or Fridays where you can go and buy mushrooms, and they sell like these big bags of mushrooms for, I think at a lower price than they normally would. Mycopia, M-Y-C-O-P-I-A. It's either Thursday or Friday. I'm sure it's on their website, but it's a really, really interesting place. And they do something really special there. So let me just give this a taste. A little bit longer. So now the other thing I'm going to add here, this is a really important part of risotto. Some people like to add cream to their risotto. I'm not a big fan of cream in my risotto. I'd rather have my richness from cheese and from butter. If you want to add cream, go for it. I just think that it's like there's a lot happening here. So, you don't have to add onto it with the cream. So in this particular batch of risotto, I'm going to add truffle butter because, why not? It's that time of year, right? It's still cold out. It's pouring rain out here. It's gloomy. Truffle butter is just so decadent and comforting. And if we're talking about things that we love and special meals, what better than treating someone you love to something with truffle butter? So I'm going to finish this with some truffle butter, but I also have here a really great cheese. This cheese is called Toma Truffle from Point Reyes Farmstead Creamery. We love them. They are a local family-owned company, very much like Jackson Family Wines, and they make some of the best cheeses I've ever had. There's not a cheese that they make that is not delicious. And I'm not gonna lie, I am not partial to. I'm kind of a cheese snob. Those of you that know me know how much I love cheese. I'm a bit of a cheese snob just because I really love cheese, and flavored cheeses are not my normal go-to. I like pure natural cheeses, but they make this truffle, and they make another like herb de Provence version, and they make one they call Tomarashi, which is with togarashi, and they are outstanding. They are outstanding. So they are the exception to the rule for me as far as cheeses that are flavored. So we're going to add some of that here too. And what that's going to do is not only add some more great truffle flavor, but it's going to add some of that richness. So we're just about there. And you can see, I want you to see, like, you can see that the best way to kind of check your risotto, how it's done, is looking along the outside of your pot, right? I can see that there's liquid. It looks like the kernels of the rice are kind of swimming, but they're not separated from that liquid, right? You can see that it's kind of gently in the liquid as opposed to the kernels and the liquid separate. I think that's kind of the best way for me to describe it. So I'm going to go ahead in this point and add my cheese and my butter. Oh yeah. Every bit of that butter. And then this is the point where I'm actually going to pay a pretty good amount of attention to my stirring. So today I have paired this risotto with the Cloud Pinot Noir. And Pinot Noir and mushrooms are they're a really natural pairing. There are very few pairings where I can kind of across the board say this goes with this exactly, but mushrooms and Pinot are one of those, ingredients that across the board are probably gonna pair well with just about any Pinot. I really love this particular Pinot with this because this Pinot is pretty fruit forward, but so I think that with that red wine reduction, you're gonna get a lot of that kind of brightness that you're gonna taste here, but also it's got this nice earth on the finish. And I really feel like the mushrooms in this are gonna just play that up. So can I have just one plate real quick so I can show them? Do you mind? Great. Okay. All right, Sasha's gonna play. All right. So I'm gonna plate this for you so you can see what I'm talking about of that relaxing, right? You could see in this risotto, like now it looks like this kind of nice emulsified, it's come together. So when I plate this, I want you to see hot lava, yeah. I want you to see that it's doing that, like I was saying, that relaxing. Nothing's sitting up on the plate, it's doing this. That's what it does. It's just kind of like, But right? See what I'm talking about? Nothing's separating. You're not seeing the liquid come out from the sides of the dish. It's held together. It's an emulsified concoction, but it's also not stiff and sitting up. You want to take that one? Yeah, and I'll take the whole pot. You got the whole pot. We got risotto coming to you guys right here. So that's one of my favorite dishes. Red wine mushroom risotto. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Help. Red wine mushroom risotto with Pinot Noir. Next up, we've got Alexa with just wait for it. Just wait for it. Thank you. Okay.
All righty. 1 second. So this time around, I have been tasked with our Stature Cabernet. So this is the best of the best here at Kendall-Jackson. It is a beautiful Cabernet, standalone Cabernet. So what can you put with this that makes it better? Really nothing. It's just so amazing all on its own. So for me, it's about simplicity. So really, really, really good chocolate mousse. And then taking it another notch, making it kind of marry with those amazing tannic wine flavors. It's making it a mocha chocolate mousse with the addition of espresso powder. So without further ado, we start with, like I said, really, really quality chocolate. So I have a 65% dark chocolate. It's from a brand called Republica out of Ecuador. It is not super sweet. It's got really earthy flavors, fruit flavors. You know, use your favorite chocolate in this. This is where you want quality. Don't use baking chips. Don't use semi-sweet. Use good quality chocolate because that's all of your flavor. And then you hear it in chef world, mise en place. It means everything in its place. This is a recipe where it's super important to have all of your ingredients measured and weighed out ready for you, because while it seems really simple, it comes together pretty quickly, but technical, meaning you have to pay attention to the very specifics of each step. Republica. So Republica, it's an entity of the company Valrhona, which maybe you've heard of. It's a very big chocolate company. Republica is kind of their smaller sister company, and they make these beautiful chocolates out of South America. So this specifically is from Ecuador. So I've got a couple mixing bowls. So this is a very traditional French chocolate mousse, meaning it has both raw eggs and cream in it. And I know what you're thinking, raw eggs. Alarm bells, salmonella. So here I'll tell you this. 1 in 20,000 eggs will give you salmonella. It comes from the shell, the outside. So it means it's a dirty egg. So if you're buying eggs from a quality source, I have my own chickens. It's like the best thing in the world. And like, there is nothing like a homegrown egg. We also have chickens here, Kendall-Jackson. We have our own flock of 100 hens. We get all their eggs. I challenge you, if you're going to do this, buy quality eggs. And if you're really worried, buy pasteurized eggs. That's like 100% guaranteed. But I'll tell you, I've never bought pasteurized eggs. I just buy quality eggs. You know where they come from. They're clean, they're fresh. And that's all you really need to know. The risks are minimal. And it's worth it. I'll tell you, the raw egg in this is worth it. So what I start with, melting my chocolate. And while that's melting, my egg whites are gonna go into my mixer. You can do this by hand because you're not going to a super stiff peak. You're going to like kind of a light and fluffy. I call it almost like a yogurt stage. It's like just thick enough to be spoonable, but nothing crazy. So I'm gonna start it in the mixer. I'll get this one out of the way. With a whisk attachment. And then to this, so there's a little bit of sugar in every addition. Sugar is kind of a stabilizer in this. It's not really adding too much sweetness because it's really like, that's not even a half a cup. It's minimal sugar here. So this step, I've got sugar and cream of tartar. Tartaric acid helps egg white to bind. So it helps it build bigger bubbles without breaking down. So that goes in there. And I'll whip those up. While those are whipping, if you've ever melted chocolate, you will know that it does not like to be too hot. So what I like to do is get a pot over a burner with about an inch of water. So you're using the steam to heat. You're not boiling it, you're not scorching it, not microwaving it, although you can if you're very careful. And just getting it to where it's melted. Just fluid, not hot. Also be very careful not to get any water into your chocolate. This is fat-based. Think about that. That's an oil. Oil and water don't mix. So we try really hard not to allow those to mix. So while we are waiting for that to mix, and it's gonna go fast. It's only 3 eggs. Just a small little baby recipe, but it goes a long way. So I'm gonna take my chocolate off of the heat. And I have my egg yolks. They go straight into my warm chocolate. Kind of going in 3 stages here. So we have our egg yolk stage, and then we'll jump to our next stage. So I'm adding my egg yolks, and you'll see chocolate does this funny thing. As soon as you add another ingredient, it changes viscosity, it changes consistency. So I've gone from this like fatty melted chocolate to this almost like Play-Doh, like thicker consistency. So just mix it really well. Leave it right there. If you need to keep it warm, you can put it back over your heat. But this is actually getting very close already. So for the consistency of the egg whites and the cream, like I said, we're not going super stiff. Actually, the lighter that we whip it, the easier it is and the silkier your mousse is gonna be. So I am taking it just a little bit. So this is like really pourable, just barely whipped. And then while we do that stage, I'm gonna go, nope, keeping it, steal my whisk. I like to reuse. So we've got heavy cream. We've got a little bit more sugar, again, for that stabilizing. And then espresso powder. So I actually brought this up for you. So this is instant espresso. It's an Italian brand. So basically you want to get the granules. It's not ground coffee. It's like the dehydrated granule instant espresso that you would buy. Excuse me. Because you don't want the texture of it, but you want all that flavor. And espresso specifically for this Stature wine, it is really big. It has intense, amazing flavors. So you want to kind of meet up to that. Espresso has bitterness, it has richness, it has nuttiness. So that kind of bridges the gap. You know, this recipe originally calls for vanilla extract. I omit that because it's creamy and it's soft and it's really delicate, which this wine is just so much bigger and beautiful than that. So the espresso right here, this is Ferrara, but I don't specifically buy any, you know, they're pretty great across the board. So we're gonna whip the cream. I'm actually just gonna do it by hand really quick because it's much faster and less noisy. Yeah, less noise. Cold cream will whip really fast, especially just a little bit. You really just want to get it frothy. It's all it really takes. So, was as quick as that. Move this out of my way. So again, we have our chocolate here. It's got the egg yolks in it. Now we have our egg whites. So I'm gonna go in half at a time for both of these. So I have just a little bit. So if you've ever read a baking recipe, you may have heard the word fold. Folding in baking, it's kind of those one of those weird baking terms. Maybe you've heard it on some funny sitcom TV shows when we're talking about folding things. I know you're not gonna fold it like a piece of paper. It's a reference to the motion of your spatula. So you're pulling it towards yourself and flopping it over the same way you do clothing sheets. So around the bowl and over itself and around the bowl and over itself. Basically, you've spent the time to whip all those bubbles into it. You don't want to knock them out. So really delicately. And it's like not any super specific motion. It's just a really delicate stir and fold. So folding. And you don't need to get it to all the way done in each step. You just need to get it a little bit of the way. And then go for your next addition. A little bit more. So half at a time, a little bit more. Delicately folding, not popping bubbles. So this one I'm gonna take almost to mixed, and then we're gonna go for our cream. So just every step of the way, lightening it, slowly, slowly building upon it. And this recipe is extremely versatile. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm just gonna scoop it straight into jars, but this can be poured into a cake pan. You could freeze it, slice it into cake slices if you want fancy slices. It's so versatile. We actually have it on our wine and food menu right now. It's molded into a very French style bomb. And so it can be as simple, you know, you can make it for two, and it's as simple as throwing it in a bowl right out the gate, or you could plan ahead and make a super elegant cake. All right, so we've got all our egg whites in there, and now I'm just gonna add the cream that's got the espresso powder in it. That's all our beautiful flavor. And like I said, it's very pourable. That leads to nice texture. And again, folding really gently. Just stirring. And most things with baking, and you'll hear me say this over and over in these cooking classes, like once it comes together, you stop. It's not, you know, it's not the risotto. We're gonna keep gently stirring it. We stop. It's when it's done. Yeah, we don't want to stir out too many bubbles. We want to change the texture. We just get it just together. So you can see everything's homogeneous. It's come together. We're lump free. And my favorite way to serve this is really, really simple. I like to grab a couple mason jars. That scooper that was on my tray. Or a spoon. Ice cream scooper. It's as easy as this. Just makes it so you're even if you feel like being fair. Scoop, scoop. Everybody gets a scoop. And then the toppings are endless. You could do nuts, you could do caramel, you could do whipped cream, you could do fruit. What I really like with this wine specifically is, so this wine has some really nice fruit notes of like dark cherry, cassis, plum. So what I have here is, these are dried black cherries. I've rehydrated them in the red wine. So basically dried cherries, pour some, you got the end of a bottle of red wine, a touch of sugar just for sweetness. And then, so they're like rehydrated, they're plumped up and they create their own syrup. So we just put a nice dollop of those on top. It's great for, this time of year, there's not a lot of fruit in season. No problem. So there you have it. As simple as that. It's just classic, plain and simple chocolate mousse with the addition of espresso powder. And that's as good as it gets. Yeah. Thank you.
The whole team, wait, Ruben,
Oh,
Sarah.
I don't know if I do.
Okay, right?
He's going for the good stuff. We don't mess around.
So I first of all like to thank our live audience for joining us today. Thank you all. For those of you that are local or planning a visit, we accept a live audience during these cooking classes. It's a very limited amount of seating because we like to keep it small, but one of the many perks is that you get to try the food that we're making today. So if you're interested in coming and joining us here live while we're doing one of these cooking Zooms, go ahead and look online at kj.com. We're doing, our next cooking class isn't until June, but we're really excited. It's going to be flavors of the summer and grilling. Paul and Ruben are going to be doing some great dishes there, and Alexa, another wonderful dessert. So go ahead and check online and book your spots and put it on your calendar. Thank you to the team behind the scenes here too, who helped us get these beautiful dishes out. And of course, our team that helped make all of the technical work possible, because every time we try to make this a little bit nicer for everyone watching, and we really appreciate all the help. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon. Cheers.
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 Cheers, chefs.
Cheers.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.
Ooh, that's delicious wine.